What if the most dangerous wound was never on your skin but in your mind? A single phrase that lingers for hours. A glance loaded with disdain that keeps you awake at night. Toxic people don't always destroy you directly. They slip quietly inside your thoughts, planting doubt, making you explain, defend, justify until you no longer trust your own ground. That is their weapon, not strength, but access. Here's the paradox. You don't defeat them by shouting louder or striking back harder. You defeat them by disappearing from the game entirely, by building boundaries so firm, so clear, that chaos cannot even find a door. Stoic philosophy calls this composure. Not passivity, not numbness, but the stillness of someone who refuses to flinch when provoked. Think of it as psychological armor. Words become arrows that never pierce. Manipulations become storms that break against a mountain, and you remain steady, silent, untouched. Stay with me. Because what follows are 7 boundaries that don't just protect you, they make you untouchable. As we step into the first chapter, picture the weight of someone else's words pressing against your chest, pushing you to react, to defend, to prove. That is how toxic people begin their work. Not by breaking your bones, but by bending your emotions. They don't need to destroy you in public. They only need to get inside your mind. That is their battlefield. And unless you learn how to draw the boundary, they will play you like an instrument, pressing the same keys again and again, waiting for the same familiar song of anger or anxiety. Now imagine this. A single sarcastic remark dropped into a conversation. It lands sharp, and before you know it, you feel the heat rising in your chest. Your pulse quickens. Your mind races for a defense. You want to speak, to explain, to throw their poison back. But pause. Ask yourself, who is really in control here? Is it you, or is it the one who planted that remark? Epictetus once warned, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. What he meant was clear. The fire is not in their words. The fire is in your reaction. Here's where Stoicism gives us our first true shield. The boundary is this simple, yet this radical. I will not let toxic people determine my emotional state. At first it sounds too easy, but the moment you refuse to react, the power shifts. Their entire game relies on your engagement. Remove the engagement, and the game collapses. Without fuel, the fire dies. They push, you don't flinch. They guilt trip, you don't bend. They withdraw in silence, hoping to spark your panic, and yet you stay steady. Nothing terrifies manipulation more than stillness. Let's bring it closer to life. You're in the middle of a conversation. The toxic person leans in and says with a sly tone, "Oh, I see." You're too good to care now. Most would feel the hook, the urge to rush into defense, to explain, to justify. But the one who has trained for composure takes a breath. They pause, and with calm eyes they answer, "Believe whatever you need to. Nothing more. No justification. No anger. Just freedom." In that single moment, you've stripped them of their favorite currency, your emotions. You've given them nothing to twist, and that nothing is everything. But how do we build this strength? Not by wishing for it, but by training it like a muscle. Start small. When someone provokes you, count 3 seconds before you answer. Feel your feet against the ground. Breathe into your chest. Remind yourself, this is emotional bait, and I do not take bait. Speak less. Observe more. Let silence stretch where excuses used to live. These small acts of discipline grow into unshakable composure. Over time, you won't need to pretend calm. you will be calm. People will try to provoke, and instead of reacting, you will simply smile. It's not indifference, it's the freedom of no longer being controlled. This is the deeper truth. Non-reactivity is not about becoming numb. It's not about denying that you feel hurt or angry. It is about mastering where you place your energy. You still care, but you care selectively. You choose when, where, and with whom to invest. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. To live by this is to step out of slavery to others' moods. You no longer wake up waiting for someone else's approval. You stop bleeding energy into every slight, every jab, every performance of manipulation. You build your own inner world, designed with intention. And in that world, toxic people find no home. Think of it as a fortress not built of stone, but of awareness. Inside, your emotions breathe freely, but they are not at the mercy of intruders. A boundary this strong does more than protect. It transforms. It shows you that serenity is not weakness. It is the highest form of power. The world may shout, the manipulator may claw, but your silence stands taller than their noise. So when someone asks how to defeat those who thrive on chaos, the answer is not louder arguments or sharper comebacks. The answer is a stillness they cannot enter. You've denied them what they crave, and in doing so, you've reclaimed what is yours, your mind, your peace, your direction. And once you taste that freedom, you'll never hand it back. This is the first boundary, the one that sets the tone for all others. Never let toxic people govern your emotional state. Hold it, train it, live it. Because once you master this, every other boundary becomes possible. And from here, the path only grows stronger. Moving into the second chapter, imagine standing in the middle of a crowded room where voices clash, demands pile, and eyes search for your reaction. You could shout back, explain yourself, or fight to be understood, but instead, you choose silence. That silence doesn't feel empty. It feels heavy, charged, like air right before a storm. And to the one trying to bait you, it feels like suffocation, because when you withhold your reaction, you cut off the very oxygen they survive on, your emotional engagement. Here's where the paradox reveals itself. In a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. Every manipulator thrives on feedback. They push to see which button still works. They provoke to test which nerve still twitches. They demand your anger, your tears, your explanations, because each reaction hands them control. But when you meet that provocation with stillness, you collapse their entire game. They're not facing your defense anymore. They're facing the void of their own tactics, and that void terrifies them. Now imagine a conversation that shifts into gaslighting. You're too sensitive. I never said that. You know the truth. You feel the pressure to argue, to defend your sanity, but you look them in the eye, remain still, and walk away. No dramatic exit, no angry rebuttal, just silence. In that moment, you didn't lose. You dismantled their illusion of control without lifting a hand. That is what Seneca would call discipline of the spirit. The refusal to spend your life answering every false charge. Silence is not weakness. It is not avoidance. It is presence. It says, I see what you are doing, and I choose not to participate. It protects your peace without sacrificing your dignity. And that is why toxic people hate it. They are not afraid of confrontation. They welcome it, because confrontation is still connection. What they fear most is disconnection, the door quietly closing on their access to your inner life. Your silence tells them, without words, you no longer live here. Think of how narcissists feed. They rely on mirroring, hurt you and watch you scream. They feel significant. Make you cry. They feel powerful. Trap you in an argument. They feel superior. But when you remain still, when your face does not shift, when your words do not arrive, their mirror cracks. And in that mirror, they are left only with themselves. Few things haunt a manipulative mind more than silence, because in silence they are forced to see the very self they've been running from. Let me share a story. A woman once told me how her partner's favorite weapon was sarcasm laced into daily conversation, a harmless line on the surface, but sharpened just enough to sting. She used to defend herself, argue back, try to prove she wasn't what he accused her of being, until one day she didn't. He spoke. She looked at him calmly, said nothing, and walked into the next room. She told me, for the first time, he didn't know what to do. That moment was the beginning of her liberation, not because silence punished him, but because silence restored her to herself. This is the essence of Stoic silence. It is containment. It is the ability to feel anger without being driven by it, to feel pain without letting it dictate your response. It is the art of holding ground without raising your voice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That wisdom is alive every time you refuse to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. But how do you build this silent force? Start here. Know when to stop talking. Most misunderstandings do not deserve an essay. Let silence stretch. Make others feel the emptiness they created. Watch your body language. Calm shoulders, steady breath, no flinch. Exit with clarity. Walking away is its own complete sentence. And when conflict rises, pause. A 5-second pause in a heated moment makes you appear 10 times stronger. None of this is about playing games. It's about embodying quiet authority. Silence without inner strength is avoidance. Silence with intention is liberation. It tells the world, I decide what affects me. I decide who gains access to my mind. Detachment is not coldness. It is choosing not to lose yourself in people who have already lost themselves. And when you hold to this, something profound happens. They cannot guilt trip you. They cannot script your reaction. They cannot make you small through your own words. You become untouchable, not because you fought, but because you refused to perform. And here lies the brutal truth. To someone addicted to control, irrelevance feels like death. When you go silent, you don't just protect your peace, you erase their script. And they are left gasping in the void. You win, not by striking harder, but by standing still. And from here, we step into an even deeper boundary, one that makes your time and presence something rare, and therefore untouchable. Advancing to the third chapter, picture the modern world with its endless notifications, buzzing phones, and the constant hum of expectation. Everyone wants a piece of you. A message answered in seconds, a call picked up no matter the hour, your emotions placed on a leash, held by someone else's urgency. At first, it looks harmless, but over time, it becomes a trap. Because accessibility, once unguarded, turns into surrender. The more available you are, the easier it is for others to invade. Now, imagine the people who know exactly when to reach for you, the narcissist who calls during your busiest meeting, the friend who unloads chaos minutes before your most important day. These moments are not coincidences. They are intrusions dressed as connection. And if you've never drawn the line, they'll never respect the space. Here lies a timeless Stoic truth. You lose power the moment you become too easy to reach. Seneca warned that our time is our most precious possession, and yet we give it away carelessly, as if it were endless. Presence without boundaries is not generosity, it is weakness disguised as kindness. Think about it. Manipulators learn your rhythms. They study when you answer, how fast you respond, which emotions rise in you the quickest. And once they've mapped you, they script you. Your life begins to bend toward their interruptions. You no longer live by your priorities, you live by theirs. But the Stoics knew the counter. It is not in shutting the world out, but in choosing when and how to show up. They called it withdrawal, not out of ego, but out of clarity. Because your time is sacred, your peace is the root of your judgment, and without peace, everything collapses. Here's a story. A man told me once that he used to respond instantly to every angry text his partner sent. He thought fast replies would calm the storm. Instead, it taught her that whenever she needed control, she only had to ignite his fear of distance. The cycle was endless, until one day he didn't answer. He read the message, he breathed, and he waited. Hours later, he replied calmly, not with apology, but with steadiness. The first time, she grew louder. The second, she accused him of being cold. But eventually, she realized her grip was broken. He was no longer a puppet to her timing. That was the day his sovereignty returned. This is where you reclaim yourself. Strategic unavailability. Not neglect. Not isolation. But the wisdom to know that your attention is not public property. You stop attending arguments you never agreed to. You stop explaining silences that require no invoice. You stop treating your presence like a hallway candle for anyone to blow on, and instead guard it like a flame inside a sanctuary. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." To squander yourself on those who exploit you is to cheapen your very life. To reserve yourself for what aligns with your peace, that is dignity. So how do you practice it? Start with delay. Just because a message arrives doesn't mean you owe a reply. Schedule your availability. Protect hours for deep work, for recovery, for silence. Don't explain your absence. You owe no one that ledger. Limit digital access. Mute the threads. Activate Do Not Disturb. Block if you must. And when needed, let a single sentence hold the line. I'm not available for that. Simple, clear, final. And yes, they will complain. They will call you cold, distant, arrogant. But understand this, what they are really saying is, you no longer feed me with your dependence, and that terrifies me. Their panic is not your burden. Their labels are not your truth. Because what is rare becomes valuable, and what is always available becomes exploited. By becoming rare, you become respected. By becoming guarded, you become free. Remember this, you are not a sponge meant to absorb the world's drama. You are a mirror, and only those aligned with your peace deserve to see their reflection in you. From here, we step toward an even sharper truth, the trap of over-explaining, and the freedom of letting silence speak in your place. Moving into the fourth chapter, imagine standing before someone who has already decided not to hear you. Their mind is closed. Their questions are not questions, but traps. Why didn't you answer? Why are you being so cold? Why can't we talk this out like adults? On the surface, it feels like dialogue. In truth, it is a performance designed to pull you back into their grip. And the more you explain, the more they twist. You don't clarify, you feed them. That is why the most radical act of self-mastery is this. Stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Here's where the exhaustion begins. Toxic people make you believe you owe them receipts. Every no must be justified. Every silence must be excused. Every boundary must be softened with apology. And so you spend your days drafting explanations that never satisfy, pouring your energy into arguments that only move further from truth. But a Stoic mind does not live in that courtroom. It knows that action itself is the only verdict. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. There is no addendum there about convincing anyone else. Clarity is enough. Now imagine the guilt loop. You draw a line, you finally say no, and instantly a wave of guilt rises in your chest. They sense it. They press harder. They know if they jab the right wound, you'll over-explain, backpedal, fold. This is the reflex they feed on. And yet the truth is simple. Your boundary is not up for discussion. Silence here is not cruelty, it is discipline. A woman once told me about her ex who kept texting after she ended things. "Why are you ignoring me? I just need closure." She almost gave in, almost sent the long message. But deep down she knew he didn't want closure, he wanted access. So she wrote one sentence: "I'm not available for this conversation. Take care." And then she stopped. No defense, no guilt, no contact. That one sentence freed her more than 100 explanations ever could. At this stage, remember the hardest lesson. No is not the start of a debate. It is the end of a transaction. No is a full sentence. You don't need to explain why you won't attend the fight, why you don't feel safe, why you changed your mind. You can simply say, "I'm not comfortable with this. This isn't something I want to participate in. No, thank you." And then stop. Silence is the seal. It's the space where manipulation dies. So how do you build this boundary in the heat of life? Pre-commit to your no. Decide your line before pressure arrives. Speak briefly, calmly, with finality, no apology hidden in your tone. Expect pushback. Let it wash against you. Journal your triggers, because guilt is where you are most vulnerable to control. And above all, practice internal validation. Say to yourself, "My peace does not require their approval." That sentence alone is armor. Here's the deeper shift. When you stop explaining, you reclaim mental space. You stop obsessing over how you're perceived. You stop rehearsing perfect sentences to avoid being misunderstood. Instead, you begin living from the inside out, anchored in principle, not popularity. This is not indifference, it is radical emotional independence. Seneca once wrote, "I judge you unfortunate because you have never lived through misfortune. You have passed through life without an opponent." He meant that our strength is revealed in the face of resistance. Choosing autonomy over approval is that very test. And yes, toxic people will react. They will call you cold. They will accuse you of being different. They will say, "You used to care more." Let them. What they are really saying is this: you are no longer emotionally dependent on my approval, and that makes me irrelevant. And irrelevance is the one burden they cannot bear. So stop negotiating your peace. Stop writing explanations no one intends to honor. Stop living as if your truth needs to be cross-examined. You don't owe them your words. You owe yourself your freedom. And from here, we turn to the next layer of strength, the art of becoming unreadable, a presence that cannot be scripted, a mind that no one can control. Advancing to the 5th chapter, picture the quiet intensity of someone watching you closer than you realize. They don't just listen to your words, they record your pauses. They don't only see your actions, they map your reactions. Every sigh, every raised voice, every glance away is written down in their invisible notebook. Toxic people operate like spies of the heart. They study you not to know you, but to use you. If they can predict you, they can control you. And if they can control you, they can break you. Here's where the trap lies. Predictability. Patterns that feel like habit to you are weapons to them. If they know guilt makes you cave, guilt becomes their tool. If they know anger makes you lash out, anger becomes their bait. If they know tears keep you near, then tears will flow right on cue. You think you're dealing with honesty, with pain, with raw emotion. You're not. You're dealing with a performance designed to play your buttons like piano keys. This is not chaos. It is strategy. But the Stoics held an advantage that turns the board upside down. They did not just train themselves to feel less, they trained themselves to react less. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And with that power, unpredictability becomes armor. When you stop reacting in the same way, you strip them of their script. They no longer know what page to turn to, what move to make next. And that unreadability, it terrifies them. Because unreadable is unbreakable. Now imagine the cycle. They blame you, you defend, they escalate, you panic, they apologize, you forgive, over and over. But one day, you pause, you do nothing. They blame you again, you remain silent. They grow louder, still nothing. Now it is only their voice echoing in the chaos. They stand exposed. Their storm meets a wall of stillness. That is not passivity. That is psychological dominance. So how do you build this strength? Audit your patterns. Notice what you always say when guilt arrives, what reflex rises when anger hits. Then create new defaults. A pause before any answer, 5 seconds of stillness before any defense. Replace explanations with questions. What makes you say that? What do you need from me right now? And sometimes replace words with nothing at all. Silence dismantles illusions faster than debate ever could. Train detachment. Journal. Breathe. Meditate. Because calm is not a mood. It is a weapon. The shift is profound. When you stop being predictable, manipulators unravel. They second-guess their tricks. They lose emotional leverage. Their chaos collapses in their own hands. You are no longer playing their game. You are standing outside of it, watching with clarity. The less they know about your next move, the less they can script your downfall. He flooded her with messages daily, hooks disguised as love. Not fury, but hooks. I miss you. I'm broken. You always understood me. She almost answered, again and again, but then something shifted. She saw the truth. It was never about love. It was about control. So she stayed silent. 3 days later, his mask cracked. You're cruel. You're not who I thought you were. That's when she knew silence had starved him. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Silence is more feared than rage. Rage gives them something to push against. Silence leaves them alone with themselves, and manipulators cannot bear that mirror. They need external noise to escape their inner disorder, but when you withdraw your reaction, you hand them back their own reflection. They are forced to see who they are, and that sight unravels them. At this stage, remember, not everything that provokes you deserves your attention. The most powerful reaction is often no reaction at all. Silence affirms this. Inner peace outweighs approval. Words can be twisted, tones distorted, emotions weaponized. But silence is bulletproof. And once they learn you can no longer be moved, their power ends where your stillness begins. Entering the 6th chapter, imagine your soul as a guarded sanctuary, a fire glowing steady in its center. Not everyone who knocks deserves entry. Not every curious eye deserves to see its light. Yet too often, we hand out our essence carelessly, exposing our fears, our wounds, our dreams to people who have not earned the right to hold them. And once exposed, that fire is no longer yours. It is fuel for their manipulation. Here's where toxic people thrive, not only on access to your time, but on access to your inner world. They study what triggers your guilt, what makes you crave approval, what softens your spine when you should stand tall. They weaponize your story until your openness becomes your cage. The Stoic response is sharp and simple. Practice controlled exposure. You are not for everyone, and that is your strength. Now imagine a co-worker who asks too much, too soon. Their words sound harmless. How's your family? What do you do outside work? You answer openly. Days later, your struggle is a joke whispered to others. Your side project is mocked behind your back. You feel betrayed, but the truth cuts deeper. The mistake was not trust, but overexposure before testing. Not everyone deserves the truth of you, and some never will. The Stoics lived this discipline. They practiced measured presence. They knew how to be sincere without bleeding out their spirit to those unworthy of it. You can be kind yet private, warm yet guarded, honest yet discerning. Authenticity is not full transparency. It is wisdom in knowing what to reveal, when, and to whom. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you can improve. Not everyone qualifies. Think of yourself as layered. One layer is public, where small interactions live. Another is tested trust, slowly earned. And at the core is the sacred circle, where only the loyal, the proven, the steady may enter. If you've been bleeding energy, drained after every conversation, chances are you've opened doors that should have stayed closed. So how do you build this discipline without turning cold? Delay disclosure. Don't hand over your truth at first meeting. Mirror before sharing. If they offer nothing of themselves, why give so much of you? Use ambiguity when needed. "I'm working on personal goals" is enough. Watch how they treat others' secrets, because gossips will never protect yours. And above all, save vulnerability for safe hands. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is sacred power reserved for the trustworthy. When you master this, something remarkable shifts. You become unreadable to manipulators, mysterious to those who drain, magnetic to those who respect. Your restraint signals self-mastery, and mastery is rare. Rare is valuable, and valuable is always respected. At this stage, carry this truth with you. In a world of oversharing, your silence is sacred. In a culture obsessed with instant intimacy, your discernment is revolutionary. You don't need to perform transparency to prove your worth. You don't need to bleed just to feel seen. You can protect your essence and remain whole. And in doing so, you declare the most liberating truth of all. I am not for everyone, and that is my power. From here, the path leads us to an even sharper skill, the art of redirection, where instead of defending your peace, you calmly steer the moment itself, leaving manipulators trapped in their own reflection. At this stage, let's face a truth that shapes every bond you will ever have. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you tolerate. Sit with that for a moment. People are not guided by your wishes or your words. They are guided by your patterns. They watch how you react, how you bend, how you return after being wronged, and they take notes. If you always forgive betrayal, betrayal will come again. If you respond to manipulation with softness, their tactics sharpen. If you stay after being disrespected, you have taught them they never need to respect you. Here's where the law of presence takes hold. Your presence is not neutral, it's a classroom. Every action, every silence, every time you stay or leave, you're teaching. And toxic people. They are quick learners. They don't ask, how does this person want to be treated? They ask, what does this person allow? If you tolerate subtle insults, backhanded compliments, hot and cold affection, they won't need to cross obvious lines. They will dance perfectly along the edges you've shown them, and soon you realize boundaries are not spoken. They are enforced by the quiet strength of how you live. The Stoics understood this without ever needing the word boundaries. They lived it. Their very presence said, my time is valuable, my energy is sacred, my peace is not negotiable. Not because they shouted it, but because their clarity radiated in every step. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In the same way, waste no words demanding respect. Become the presence that commands it. Think of how people mirror what you project. If you are always available, your time loses value. If you tolerate chaos, chaos multiplies. But if you carry calm, you invite calm. If you show discipline, people rise to meet it, or they drift away. And either outcome is victory. A story comes to mind. An empath shared how she lived as the understanding one in her family. Her sister played every game, crying when cornered, exploding when questioned, withdrawing when denied her way. And every time, the empath apologized, even when she was not at fault, until one day she stopped. Her sister accused her, I guess you don't care about family anymore. She looked at her calmly and said, I care enough to stop enabling dysfunction. Then silence. No further defense, no emotional performance. That single moment ended years of manipulation, not because of anger, but because her presence finally said what her words never could. You can't reach me through guilt anymore. This is the hidden power of leaving. Sometimes the greatest lesson you ever teach is the day you walk away without rage, without revenge, but with calm certainty. Because in that silence, the other person sees what they never believed. You meant it. Your boundary was real. Their behavior had consequences, and your absence became the consequence they never saw coming. To master this, begin with an audit of your energy leaks. Where do you keep showing up while being drained? Then replace words with action. Don't say, don't talk to me like that. Simply disengage. Let people feel your distance. Don't explain it. Let silence be the teacher. Be unapologetically unavailable for chaos. You owe no one access to your inner space. Surround yourself not with survival, but with alignment. Because true power is never in approval. It's in autonomy. You'd rather be misunderstood in peace than loved in dysfunction. That shift is the ultimate Stoic boundary. It destroys toxic dynamics faster than any confrontation because it sends one message louder than all words. I respect myself too much to let you teach me how little you do. And from here, you begin to see the real war was never with them. It was with yourself, and you've just chosen to win it. Stay strong, protect your peace, and subscribe now to master Stoic power against toxic people.